Captain Eric Shaw's hand slammed into Matthew Brooks's chest with enough force to send a 200-pound man backward off the dock. The shove was not a warning. It was an ejection. Matthew's boat shoes left the wood. His body twisted, arms reaching for nothing. The Marina's polished teak turning sideways above him, the water hit like a cold slab. Salt burned his throat. Bubbles rolled across his face, but his eyes stayed open. He didn't thrash. He broke the surface without a gasp. Treading water 2 yards from the yacht. On deck, a woman in a wide-brimmed sun hat still clutched her champagne flute with white knuckles.
You work on my boat. You do as I say. Now swim to the ladder. Deckhand.
From the deck of the yacht. Mrs. Pritchard didn't applaud. She and her husband just stared. The way people stare when a line they didn't know existed gets crossed. Matthew swam 2 strokes, then gripped the algae-slick ladder, water sheeting from his navy polo as he pulled himself up. He didn't look back at the yacht. Not once.
That's right. Keep walking. Tell the dockmaster I said so.
He didn't shake his head. He didn't wipe his face. He just walked, wet canvas shorts sticking to his legs, boat shoes squelching on the boards, and that silence, that particular silence, should have scared Captain Eric more than any punch. But it didn't, because Eric wasn't listening. Maddo walked past the yacht club, past the shimmering white boats, to a gray sedan in the back of the lot. Water dripped from his shorts onto the asphalt like a slow, deliberate clock.
2 years. I've been invisible in this place for 2 years.
Captain Eric had no idea who he had just shoved. Matthew Brooks was not a deckhand. He was a former Navy boatswain. 3 deployments, 2 combat ribbons, a man who had tied bowlines on carrier decks in 60-knot winds. 2 years ago, after his service, he had walked into a law office and signed papers transferring a controlling stake of Brentwood Marina to a shell company, Briarwood Holdings, LLC. 51%. Enough to evict any tenant, alter any lease, or shutter the marina entirely. But he didn't announce it. He didn't even tell the harbor master. Instead, he hired on as a deckhand. 1 day a week, no logo polo, no Navy mention. He scrubbed teak, coiled lines, and watched, listened, documented.
Every captain thinks a deckhand sees nothing. That's why they forget to watch their mouths.
For 2 years, he had cataloged every screamed threat, every shortcut around safety, every guest who left the dock pale-faced after a charter with Eric Shaw. Today, the shove had been captured on 4 different security cameras, and Eric had no idea he had just handed Matthew the final entry. He put the key in the ignition, the engine humming quietly in the lot. He wasn't driving away. He was driving toward the Marina office. The sedan's engine idled. Matthew lifted his phone and dialed a number he'd never had to use before.
Matthew, I've got monitor 3 on my screen right now. I saw the whole thing.
I need the footage, all 4 angles.
Already saved to a thumb drive. But there's something else I've been sitting on. An LLC transfer came through 2 years back, Briarwood Holdings. 51%. I've been waiting for the owner to show up.
Then you know what I am. Get Gable and the other partners here tonight. 9 o'clock.
They won't come on a Saturday night. Gable's at his club.
Tell them the controlling owner is calling a mandatory meeting. They'll change their plans.
He ended the call. The headlights swept across the marina as the sedan pulled out of the lot, heading toward the office. Inside the harbor master's office, Ron stared at the frozen frame. Eric's hand still pressed into Matthew's chest, then picked up his phone again. 6 hours earlier, the sun hadn't yet burned off the morning mist. Matthew Brooks backed his sedan into a corner space, same as every Thursday.
Who tied this cleat? It looks like my 6-year-old niece did it.
Matthew glanced at the stern line. The knot was wrong. A rolling hitch where a cleat hitch belonged.
That'll slip under load. You need a cleat hitch.
I tied it fine. Don't touch anything unless I tell you.
Eric turned to a client loading a cooler and laughed, a hollow sound meant to dismiss the deckhand he couldn't remember hiring.
You want to find something to do? Polish every brass fitting on this dock. Start at the gate.
Every boat has a captain. Not every captain knows the first thing about a boat.
He filed it away, another time-stamped violation of basic seamanship. Another reason the man standing over him shouldn't have a license.
Keep talking, Captain. Every word you say is building your own exit.
By late morning, Captain Eric's hands were still shaking off the previous night's bourbon. He tied a stern line with the confidence of a man who'd never had one fail, because he'd never noticed.
That's a rolling hitch. The wrong hitch.
I've tied this knot 1,000 times. Keep your mouth shut.
Captain, forgive me, but that line doesn't look right. My husband's captain always uses a different knot.
Eric's face flooded red. He spun on the deckhand, jabbing a finger toward the water.
Get off my dock.
His shove caught Matthew square in the chest. The deckhand's feet left the wood. Salt water swallowed the sound of the splash. Bubbles, and then stillness. High on the dock, 4 security cameras captured every frame. The knot, the shove, the fall, and fed them to a hard drive in the harbor master's office. Captain Eric stood at the edge, breathing hard, with the uneasy sense that something had just shifted underneath him. 10 minutes after the splash, the harbor master's door swung open. Matthew Brooks stepped inside, water still sheeting from his polo, and shut it behind him.
Monitor 3. I've got it looped.
The freeze frame glowed, Eric's palm flat against Matthew's chest, the dock a blur behind them. Ron tapped the keyboard, and the image shuddered into motion.
I called Gable. He sounded like a man swallowing rocks. They'll be here at 9.
Good.
He asked what this was about. I told him the controlling stake wanted to discuss a personnel matter. He didn't laugh.
The USB.
Ron laid the drive in Matthew's palm, small enough to disappear in a fist, heavy with 2 years of waiting.
When they arrive, don't tell them who I am. Let me introduce myself.
Ron didn't answer. He just looked at the frozen image on the monitor and wondered how many other captains had no idea what was already moving beneath their feet. At 9 o'clock that night, under the brass chandelier of the private boardroom, 3 minority owners sat rigidly. Ron stood by the door. The man in the soaked polo walked to the head of the table like he owned it.
We were told the controlling partner wanted to address us. I assumed it would be someone we'd recognize.
You recognize this?
This is you. All those Thursdays.
51%. I've been scrubbing teak and watching your captains for 2 years.
He plugged a USB drive into the conference monitor. The screen flickered, and then the shove played in high definition. Mrs. Pritchard's horrified gasp, audible even on the recording.
We had no idea.
You had no idea because you didn't want to know. This marina has been a country club for bullies. That ends Friday. Mandatory tenant meeting. Friday, 5 p.m. Every captain, every slip holder. No exceptions.
The boardroom fell silent. The only sound was the hum of the monitor, frozen on Eric's contorted face. Gable slowly nodded. By 7 a.m. Friday, a crisp white notice hung on every dock bulletin board. Mandatory tenant meeting, 5 p.m. today, all slip holders. Signed, Briarwood Holdings.
Who do these people think they are? I've been here 15 years. No meeting is going to change that.
He ripped the paper off the corkboard, crumpled it in his fist, and tossed it into the water. A small crowd of captains gathered near the fuel dock, their whispers carrying the same question. Who owned Briarwood Holdings?
Some investment group trying to squeeze us. They don't know who they're dealing with.
From the shadow of a maintenance shed, Matthew Brooks watched Eric's performance. The same navy polo still on his back. The same quiet eyes.
Arrogance is always predictable. That's what makes it a weapon. He's already crushing the notices. The whole dock is nervous. He has no idea.
The room is set for 5. Gable's been quiet all morning. I think he's finally seen the writing.
The Marina hummed with unease, each captain suddenly eyeing their neighbor, wondering who might be called to account by lunchtime. Captain Eric Shaw was 2 whiskey sours deep at the yacht club bar, his uniform collar unbuttoned, his voice carrying across the polished mahogany.
They can hold a dozen meetings. I've got 15 years of repeat clients. The Marina needs me more than I need it.
A younger captain approached, his glass untouched. Eric barely turned his head.
Relax. This is some pencil pusher trying to justify his salary. I've survived 3 management buyouts. I am the top earner in this harbor. Every charter season starts and ends with my boat. They won't touch me.
30 miles inland, Matthew Brooks stood in a quiet apartment, the Marina's salt air replaced by the scent of dry cleaning. On the bed lay a navy suit, tailored to military precision, a white shirt, and a pair of polished black Oxfords. Beside it, a leather folio held the lease for Slip D Timecore 14, Eric Shaw's slip. He had reviewed every clause the night before.
Triple the fees. He won't last 6 months, but he'll have to answer for Thursday first.
He checked his watch. The Marina clock tower would strike 5 in 2 hours. At 5 o'clock, a dark sedan pulled through the Marina gate. Harbormaster Ron stepped forward to meet it.
Right on time, Mr. Brooks. The room is ready for you.
The deckhands near the fuel dock stopped coiling lines. The man stepping out wore a navy suit, not a polo. A deckhand's whisper cut the late afternoon air. "Isn't that the quiet one who polishes brass on Thursdays?" Matthew Brooks pushed through the glass doors of the conference hall. His briefcase, his only companion. The room went silent. 40 captains in starched whites turned as one toward the man in the tailored suit. In the front row, Captain Eric Shaw sat with his arms crossed, his smirk fixed like a figurehead on a ship.
About time. Let's get through this so I can get back to paying clients.
Matthew didn't break stride. He walked to the podium and set down the leather folio. Ron locked the doors. The click echoed. There would be no early exits.
My name is Matthew Brooks. I am the controlling partner of Briarwood Holdings. I own 51% of this marina. You all answer to me.
You are a deckhand. A deckhand, scrubbing teak on my boat. This is absurd.
Matthew didn't answer. He lifted a remote. The screen behind him flared to life. 4 angles of Thursday afternoon, on loop.
That's me. Oh God, that's my husband and me. He threw that man right off the dock.
Turn that off. This is a lie. You'll regret this, deckhand.
Sit down, Captain, before I put you down.
This is just 1 day's footage. I have over 30 more incidents logged. Every threat you made, every corner you cut.
The 40 captains in the room watched the knot come untied again and again, and not one of them said a word in Eric Shaw's defense.
You will not be evicted tonight, but your lease is under immediate review, and your conduct will be audited.
Eric pushed against Ron's arm, but the fight was gone. For the first time in 15 years, nobody was listening to him.
Effective immediately. The slip fee for D-14 is tripled. You'll pay $9,000 a month.
9,000. You are insane. I'll fight this.
Your lease allows for emergency rate adjustments in cases of gross negligence. The board has already signed off.
This is robbery. I am the reason half these boats dock here.
Furthermore, a full behavioral review of every captain on these docks begins immediately. 6 months, no exceptions.
You don't have the authority. I'll call my lawyer.
And your lease is now under direct review. 1 more safety violation and you are out.
Eric shoved Ron's arm aside and stormed toward the doors. The lock clicked, but he slammed it open and was gone. The room sat in stunned silence. The man who boasted of being untouchable had just run from a meeting he couldn't control. Matthew closed the leather folio. The screen behind him went black. The meeting, however, was far from over. As the captains filed out, 3 men lingered. They approached the podium, their starched whites suddenly too tight. The first spoke, his voice low, I've got 12 years of logs that won't survive a real audit. I'd rather walk.
You are choosing to leave? There's a path to stay if you are willing to meet our new standards.
The second captain simply set a folded paper on the podium and walked out without a word. Matthew unfolded it. A resignation. 3 lines. No excuses.
I am not here to end livelihoods, but I won't shelter a culture of negligence.
The third captain nodded once, laid his own letter beside the first, and followed the others into the dusk. 3 slips would be vacant by morning. Matthew stacked the letters, his expression unreadable.
3 resignations in 10 minutes. That's not a house cleaning. It's a purge.
It's 3 less captains I have to fire. Call the VA. I have a program they'll want to hear about.
The first class of veterans gathered on the dock at dawn. The empty slips had been transformed, sails bent on, a sign reading open to all.
No fees, no applications. If you served, you sail. This is your harbor now.
A veteran in a wheelchair stared at the water and said something quiet. I never thought I'd sail again.
You'll be at the helm before sunset. That's not a request. That's your station.
Across the harbor, Eric Shaw sat alone on his yacht. The binoculars shook in his hand. The glass caught the image of a man in a wheelchair, raising a sail. Eric's jaw tightened. He hadn't picked up a client in 12 days. The answering machine had filled and stopped blinking. A half-empty whiskey bottle sat on the chart table, beside a tablet, showing the Marina's new website, Veterans Sailing Program. On the sailboat, Matthew knelt beside a young Navy vet, tracing a course on a chart. This is your watch, he said, by sunset. The Marina was quiet again, but the sails were still up in Eric Shaw's binoculars. 2 weeks after the first sail, a small for-sail sign hung from the stern rail of slip D-14.
Eric hasn't chartered in 2 weeks. Boat's officially listed, asking half what it's worth.
Good. He's no longer fit for this harbor.
Matthew walked the dock, the afternoon sun glinting off the new Marina office windows.
We've got a waiting list for the Veterans Program. 10 names, and every other slip is full.
Fill the remaining empty slips with the first 3 on that list. No charge.
Inside Eric's yacht, the chart table was buried in unpaid invoices and uncashed checks. Through the porthole, the for-sail sign bobbed in the wake of a passing sailboat. Eric hadn't left the boat in 3 days. The whiskey bottle on the galley counter was new. Matthew stood at the end of the dock, hands in his pockets, and watched the Marina settle into a new rhythm. The dock lights had just flickered on when Eric Shaw stumbled off his boat, reeling toward the figure at the end of the dock.
You ruined me. 15 years of business gone because of you.
You tied a rolling hitch instead of a cleat hitch. You threw a man off your boat. I just stopped you.
Eric lunged, but the whiskey made him stumble. His fist swung wide, missing Matthew by a foot.
That's enough, Eric. Back off now.
Ron caught Eric's arm and twisted it behind his back. Matthew stared, unblinking.
You don't get to hurt people here anymore. It's over. Go home.
Matthew turned and walked toward the parking lot, his footsteps steady on the dock boards. Eric sagged in Ron's grip, muttering curses that no one was listening to. The Marina settled into darkness, the only sound the soft clang of halyards against aluminum masts. At dusk, Matthew stood at the end of the dock, the sky a soft bruise of purple and gold. He wore his navy polo and canvas shorts, the same clothes from the day he was shoved. A veteran in a wheelchair rolled up and said, "Thank you, Mr. Brooks. I haven't felt the wind like that in years."
Fair winds.
The veteran nodded and wheeled away, the sound of his chair fading into the water's hush. Matthew didn't move. His steady gaze held the horizon, where the last drop of sunlight bled into the dark sea. His hands stayed in his pockets. For the first time in 2 years, he wasn't watching anyone.
No more hidden cameras. Just the wind, the sails, and the veterans who earned this harbor.
The Marina had a new owner, and under his quiet watch, a new heartbeat, steadier than any engine, and no one would ever be shoved from this dock again. A week later, a towboat eased Eric Shaw's yacht out of Slip D Neckety 14. The for sale sign had been replaced by a simple departure notice. No ceremony, the white hull passed the breakwater for the last time, shrinking against the open ocean until it was just a fleck of memory on the horizon. In the same afternoon, 3 sailboats cut across the harbor, their decks crowded with veterans in life jackets. Someone had sewn a new burgee, a gold anchor on a blue field. Matthew stood on the dock, his hands loose at his sides, watching the boats tack with the same calm he'd worn every Thursday for 2 years. A young woman with a prosthetic arm hauled in a jib sheet with perfect timing, laughing into the salt spray. Behind him, the harbor master's crew had mounted a bronze plaque on the main dock piling. It caught the sun, fair winds and following seas, donated by Briarwood Holdings in honor of all who serve. The late sun caught the lettering, throwing long shadows across the teak. Matthew didn't look at the plaque. He just kept his eyes on the water, where his quiet work had finally taken hold, and from that dock, no one was ever tossed again. 1 year on, the Marina's waiting list had grown to 30 names. The local news called it the harbor that chose service over status. Matthew Brooks still wore a navy polo on Thursdays, but now a small embroidered anchor sat over his heart, the Briarwood Holdings mark. He spent mornings reviewing program applications with Ron and afternoons on the water, quietly teaching knots to veterans who'd lost fingers but not fight. A triple amputee docked an adapted sailboat with a precision that made the old captains stop and stare. Ron walked the dock with a new clipboard, but the same tired eyes. Matthew just looked at the plaque, fair winds and following seas. The bronze had weathered to a soft green, but the words still held. He stood at the end of the dock, hands in pockets, the same posture as the day he was shoved. But everything around him had changed. The marina hummed with laughter, not shouting. Every sail carried a veteran. Every veteran carried a story. On a dock where a man once thought he could discard another like trash, a small plaque proved that dignity answers quietly and with great patience. The harbor had a new heart. It beat in time with the tide, and it would never again be ruled by a closed fist. Early on a June morning, Matthew stood at the end of the dock, a coffee in his hand, the same navy polo on his back. A veteran with a service dog passed by and said, "Morning, Mr. Brooks." Matthew just raised his cup. Out in the harbor, a J-class sloop cut the water under full sail, its crew a mix of veterans and civilian volunteers. A young man with a prosthetic leg trimmed the jib with a turn of his wrist, the line running free. Ron came and stood beside him. No words needed. They watched the harbor together.
We did it, Ron, not me. We.
Yeah, we did.
The sun climbed higher over the masts, and the marina was alive. Not with the noise of old, but with the steady rhythm of purpose. Matthew poured the last of his coffee into the sea, a quiet offering to the tide that had washed away so much. And the harbor answered, not with words, but with the swell of sails and the sound of men and women who had served. Now truly home, the dock had known a shove. Now it knew only the steady rhythm of morning tide and the quiet scuff of canvas boat shoes. Matthew Brooks stepped onto the very boards where he'd fallen, a coffee in his hand, the same navy polo on his back. A veteran in a wheelchair rolled out of the early mist, paused and nodded. Matthew nodded back. No words were needed. The harbor had learned to speak in gestures. He walked to the end of the dock and looked down at the water where he had surfaced 2 years earlier. The water gave nothing back. No anger, no echo. The bronze plaque caught the first light, its green patina a quiet witness to the transformation. Fair winds and following seas. The words weren't for him. They were for everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. Matthew turned and walked back along the dock, the same boards, the same wake of light behind him. The Marina woke behind him, not with a captain's bark, but with the gentle clink of halyards and the murmur of a grateful harbor off his dock. Now, more than ever, it was his dock, but it belonged to every soul who deserved a fair wind. The bronze plaque had weathered another season, its green patina deepening. But the sun still caught the words at dawn, fair winds and following seas. A promise to the harbor, kept by a quiet man in a navy polo. Matthew Brooks never gave another speech. He let the sails speak for him. On a dock where a man once thought he could discard another like trash, veterans now lined up to learn a cleat hitch. The slip where Eric Shaw's yacht once bobbed remained empty and quiet, but the veterans program had filled every other berth. Eric's name faded from the Marina's memory, swallowed by the tide that took his boat. But Matthew's name appeared only once, in small letters on the bottom of the plaque, beneath the phrase he chose, Briarwood Holdings. We serve because we remember. And that was enough. More than enough, because on his dock, no one would ever be thrown again, only welcomed home.